Hello, welcome to the Katy Show. I'm your host, Katy, addressing the indoctrination of the nation, as always. And we are definitely delving into that topic this week. We started at the beginning of the week. We updated on the I-85 bridge collapse and the repairs that need to be done with that. We know that Trump has graciously granted from the Department of Transportation personally to Nathan Deal $10 million in emergency relief in federal aid. So thank you to the federal government for that. Now, according to ABC coverage, this may be hundreds of millions of dollars of repairs. So this is no pocket change here. This is, a heavy repair. It's had a lot of effects on traffic. This has been a highly influential, bridge collapse here in Atlanta, of course, and only adding to the madness of rush hour here in Atlanta. And already exploding city on population. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Maybe too soon. So anyway, we went on to talk about Judge Neil Gorsuch, and he is up in a couple days to be voted in as Supreme Court Justice to replace the late Judge Antonin Scalia. And Antonin Scalia was appointed by Ronald Reagan, and now, if Neil Gorsuch gets in, he will have been appointed by another conservative-minded politician, Donald Trump. So we see the commonalities in that if Neil Gorsuch is to be elected. Now, the main topic of this week, as you know, we always do our weekly updates. We started doing that a short time ago, about a month ago. So our main topic is this Open Society, the Open Society Foundations by George Soros, CEO and chairman. Founded Open Society Foundation some 30, 40 years ago. And he really believes in this concept of the open society. Now, the open society was a phrase coined by Mr. Karl Popper, coined by French philosopher Henry Bergson. And Karl Popper went on to develop the meaning of this phrase in the 1940s. And he also founded a school of thought at LSE, London School of Economics. And George Soros was a student of his. Karl Popper founded the Department of Philosophy, Logic, and Scientific Method at the London School of Economics. So George Soros, he was asked in an interview what he defined as an open society. And, he really didn't have an answer. He really said, he really didn't have a concise definition. And maybe that's because he was not really aware that he was going to be asked that question, because Karl Popper actually did define an open society. We'll go over that exact definition. But for some reason, George Soros says that an open society defines itself. And I see where he's coming from when we look over the definition, so we'll see. An open society is a society that critically scrutinizes its own values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions. It goes hand in hand with the philosophy of science coined by Mr. Karl Popper that he is primarily known for. His philosophy of science that is called critical rationalism, which leads to falsifiability, which is also another way of saying the problem of demarcation, which is the problem of social constructs. So I know that's a lot to take in if you're just tuning in for the first time today, this Wednesday, and you've missed the last two episodes. Basically, this falsifiability is doubting all classical empiricism. It's doubting that knowledge is knowledge, because everything happens by chance and no one can predict what will happen next. So therefore, the past happened by chance, so we can't predict the future based upon the past, because everything in the past just happened by chance. So it essentially denies classical empiricism, which bases knowledge off of experience, and that knowledge and experience translates to fact. So that's probably the best way I've been able to explain it thus far. When Karl Popper went on to develop this phrase, the implied contrast was between the totalitarian regime of the Soviet Union at the time, and that represented a closed society, because as you know, we're talking about the Open Societies Foundation, and that contrasted with the Western democracies as open societies, quote unquote. So The 5th century comparison, though, that is covered in depth is it's the first occurrence on record of this distinction, the first occurrence on record of a, return to a closed society from an open society. So this is the first record of analysis of the open society dates back to the 5th century in the Peloponnesian War. So the first occurrence on record is Athens, 5th century BC. This thought is aligned with Socrates and their democratic policies. Source IEP, International Encyclopedia of Philosophy.utm.edu, and then prompted to return Athens to a closed society, aka a return to tribalism. Now, what is a closed society? Well, it's synonymous apparently with a return to tribalism. And we know that an open society is a society that critically scrutinizes its own beliefs, values, institutions, and traditions. So a closed society must be a society that does not scrutinize its own values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions, and therefore submits and believes in its values, institutions, traditions, which you can associate these days with the Conservative Party in the United States of America. Excuse me. So, what is a closed society? Aside from that reverse definition we just did, a closed society is characterized by societal hierarchy, conformity, and customs of the tribe. These customs of the tribe are also called traditions. It is also characterized by a deference to authority and tradition and culture, submission to tradition and culture. Now, it's interesting to think as one submitting to his tradition or culture because, when I think of tradition, I think of celebrating traditions. I think of embracing traditions. But from this angle, they look at tradition as something that confines us, something that tells us what we do and what we don't do. So that's not how I was raised to look at tradition. See, I was raised to look at tradition as something to embrace and to celebrate. But this is a totally different angle on it. So it's claiming that this closed society has a strange submission to its authority and its traditions and culture. Excuse me. Now, Popper associates culture with a closed society. Is this problematic? Well, for conservatives in the USA, whether they realize it or not, this belief is highly problematic because as a conservative, you are adherent to your traditions and your beliefs. At least in the United States of America, we, for the most part, if we are socially conservative, you have the respect for religious tradition, whichever religion that is, and you uphold that and you embrace that and you celebrate that. But from a liberal, socially liberal perspective, that would be seen as closed-minded. And that would, make you be perceived as submissive to your own traditions when in reality you're embracing them in your perspective. So is it closed or open society, or is it just simply a difference in perspective? Now, this whole idea, because the open society criticizes social constructs, when in fact, the definition of a closed and open society are constructed definitions. These are in and of themselves created by the mind, imagined, constructed definitions. So for Soros, from being a student of Popper, to go and tell the world, if you are adherent to your traditions and your values and you're not scrutinizing your traditions and your values, that makes you a closed society. Well, who is he to say? Because all he's doing is throwing us another construct. That's really all that he's doing. So Popper associates culture with a closed society, and Popper associates a closed society with negativity. Thus, Popper sees culture as a negative trait of humanity. Now, that's the drum roll. Because closed society with negativity, culture, negative. I do not see culture as a negative trait of humanity. I just do not. So, if you are seeing what I'm seeing, and if you believe what I believe, then you deny this whole entire idea of a closed versus an open society that this Open Society Foundation by George Soros fights for. Then, you understand that he created this from a whole different angle than the way that, conservative-minded people see it. As a conservative-minded person, I'm proud of my beliefs and my traditions, and I feel them, and they're a part of me, and I embrace them, and I love them. But from George Soros, he sees them as something that traps me and confines me and makes me something lesser than what I could be, I suppose, because it supposedly confines me, according to Soros, and this I just can't get with. So it's a very out there philosophical idea, but it is trickling down. Like I've stated, it's trickling down to the individual level, people. Like I stated, I talked to someone the other week who said that my nationalism was a figment of my imagination. I mean, this is really trickling down. Culture is dissolving right before our eyes, people. Culture is dissolving. And if you're not studying political sciences, you're probably not noticing it, because guess what? You're busy. And everybody is so busy and running around and doing their day-to-day activities, they don't have time to notice what's right in front of their eyes. If it's not blasted on the news right in front of them, they don't have time to notice what's going on. If you want to know what's going on, and you only have about 30 minutes a day to research, you can check out this show. I'll do that for you. But I can't do it alone. You have to also listen. Now, please stay tuned in, because part 2 is coming right up after these brief commercials. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at KatyFYNTV and email me with questions, comments, and suggestions at Katy@FetcherNews.com. I want to thank Brett and Rick for regularly sending me those emails, and I'll be looking forward to going over those stories in the future, amigos. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back.
Ace is your helpful place for paint and home goods, tools, outdoor living, and lawn equipment. But did you know Ace Hardware of Blue Ridge is a little bit more? We have hunting rifles and accessories for your next hunting trip. We have Amish furniture imported directly from Ohio. And we have Ace Custom Woodworks for all your custom wood project needs, from cabinets to artwork. Ace Hardware of Blue Ridge, we have your new house in stock.
At Days Chevrolet in Jasper, we make everything better. It all starts with a huge new Chevy selection. Then we heap on the discounts to make sure your Chevy price is the lowest you'll find anywhere. And if you like great customer service, you'll love it at Days. Bigger selection, lower prices, easy financing, and great customer service. Your better day is just ahead at Days Chevrolet in Jasper, where new Chevys cost less.
Better days ahead, Days Chevrolet.
Find new roads.
North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds. Come on in to view the area's largest selection of fine jewelry at North Georgia Diamond. All repairs and designs are done on-site by our jewelers. And North Georgia Diamond has the lowest prices on loose diamonds. You can also sell your gold, silver, and coins at North Georgia Diamond between Walmart and Lowe's in East LJ. Locally owned by Bill and Allison Craig, North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds in North Georgia.
Hi, I'm Rhonda the Mattress Lady, and this is my husband Gary, owners of Mattress Overstocked in LJ next to Walmart. And we want to earn your business. From the time you walk in our door to the time we deliver your new mattress to your door, you will see the difference. Our selection and prices are the best in North Georgia, and customer service is our top priority. So y'all come on in and let us help you find the right mattress at the right price. That's Mattress Overstocked in LJ next to Walmart.
It's a new year, new you at Schottenkirk Ford Jasper. Ring in the new year with huge deals on a brand new Ford. Right now, get exceptional offers like 0% financing plus a $1,500 factory rebate on a new 2017 Ford F-150 XLT. Or get 0% financing plus a $1,000 factory rebate on a new 2017 Ford Explorer. Make your resolution a reality during the New Year, New You sales event at Schottenkirk Ford Jasper, home of the Schottenkirk Customer Guarantee. Visit us online at SchottenkirkFordJasper.com.
What you gonna do with all that junk?
Hello, welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to the Katy Cecine Show, addressing the indoctrination of the American nation. As always, you can follow me at Twitter at KatyFYNTV and email me at Katy@fetchernews.com with emails, comments, and suggestions right below for you. You can screenshot it if you don't feel like writing, because we've got your back here at FYNTV. As always, Rule News Now. So, we have been going over something very, very pertinent to the indoctrination of the nation, which is, of course, the theme of this entire show. And the inspiration for this show, was a book called based on the indoctrination of the nation by Alan Bloom, which of course escapes me right now. Yeah, of course, I can't think of it at the moment. But anyway, we're talking about another book today, The Crisis of Global Capitalism and Open Society Endangered. So we're talking about a couple books today that have to do with a closed society, and what is an open society versus a closed society. An open society, according to Karl Popper, Soros' inspiration, is a society that critically scrutinizes its own values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions. So therefore, a closed society is a society that does not critically scrutinize its own values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions, and therefore submits. So there's a deference in a closed society. There's a deference to authority, tradition, and culture. And Popper associates culture with the closed society, or that's how it seemed. But when Popper first made this open, closed society differentiation, it was in relation to the Soviet Union versus the Western democracy. So if we were to say, what is the U.S. today? Well, based on Karl Popper's initial associations, the United States is an open society. But according to George Soros, it is not an open society. So although Soros was a student of Karl Popper, I believe that he's kind of off the beaten path of Karl Popper's philosophies. Although he was a student of Karl Popper, George Soros is not Karl Popper. Karl Popper is a totally different man. And I think that people are crediting George Soros almost for Popper's work. And because of that, George Soros is, respected as his philosophical king when he has factually rearranged a philosophical king's work to fit his own agenda. And that's the issue with George Soros, is that, initially we were the open society. The United States of America was the open society that Karl Popper was referring to. Now, how come all of a sudden that George Soros has come out with this book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism? How come all of a sudden we're known as a closed society? Last time I checked, the U.S., scrutinized its own values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions so that it constantly improved itself. But it doesn't mean that we neglected our values, traditions, and beliefs. And that seems like it's what Soros wants us. It seems like that's what Soros wants us to do. It seems like Soros expects us to, and there's that book for you up to look at right here. So it seems like Soros expects us to want our culture to dissolve, to be okay with our culture dissolving. And he has tied in the dissolving of culture with an open society, when Karl Popper never intended for that to happen. No. See, the definition of a closed society just means that, we scrutinize it. We don't just blindly submit. But it doesn't mean that we are absent of culture. It never said anything about being absent of culture. It just said, that you scrutinize and you criticize it. Values, beliefs, institutions, and traditions. Now, where does it say in that definition that those are non-existent? Are you following me? I hope I am making sense. I hope I'm coming across and making sense to everyone out there. So, is it Popper that associates culture with a closed society? Is it Popper that associates closed society with negativity? Is it Popper that sees culture as a negative trait of humanity? No. That's probably all George Soros. But it's confusing, and I think there's a fine line. And if anyone has more information on that, please send that to me. But based on my research, it seems that, Karl Popper has been made to have synonymous beliefs and the same beliefs as George Soros, although he preceded George Soros, when in reality George Soros has misconstrued Karl Popper's philosophy to fit his own George Soros agenda of this redefined open society with an absence of culture. Karl Popper never intended open society to not have culture, to have an absence of culture. He never intended that, but that is what Soros is doing. Because if it's his agenda, okay, I think we've got that point down. It's just very heavy to take in. So Popper described, so we're going back to the 5th century example regarding the Peloponnesian War, the Delian League versus the Peloponnesian League. The Delian League, of course, the naval forces, the sea captains of Athens, and the Peloponnesian League of Sparta, which did prevail, hence the name the Peloponnesian War. So Spartans won, of course, hence the name Peloponnesian War, victory of the Peloponnesian League of Sparta. Now, Popper describes Sparta as arrested tribalism. Thus, he associated them with having a severe case of being closed, of being a closed society, and that Nazis and other totalitarian regimes were inspired by Sparta regarding the times of the Peloponnesian War, of course. Now, both Athens and Sparta were, land conquering and traditional cultural groups of peoples. So I guess, I think in the sense that he's describing Sparta as arrested tribalism, he is, is essentially saying that Sparta was the physical, was the physically fit. It was the left-brained of the two. Whereas Athens was the right-brained of the two. It was creative. It was the intellectual. Let's pop up that picture, Sam, the red picture of the brain versus the boxing glove. So there's this photo when you look up Sparta and Athens, and you get the boxing glove versus the brain. Because we have the boxing glove that represents the Peloponnesian League that represents Sparta, the left brain of the Greeks, the logical side, the rational side, and then we have the brain that represents Athens, representing the intellectual Greeks that lost the war, the artistic Greeks, the Greeks that emphasize Dionysus and, the god of wine. So anyway, moving on to George Soros' book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism, Open Society Endangered, which of course I mentioned in the beginning when I couldn't think of the name of the book by Alan Bloom, of course, that I mentioned. So, interview of George Soros in 1998 on his book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism. Soros claims that he fears instability of financial markets, yet claims that he uses it to his advantage. So, here he has admitted in an interview that he uses the instability of financial markets to his advantage. Very interesting. And bear in mind, this man has American citizenship, and He funded millions into the Hillary Clinton campaign. He's also funded Barack Obama. He funds millions of activists all over the country and world through MoveOn.org and funnels money to these programs in order to pay these protesters so that they don't have any excuse to not protest Trump and be the resistance that Hillary Clinton touts on her Twitter today as we speak. So Soros believes in the economic concept, and I believe this was designed by his inspiration, Karl Popper, reflexivity, which denies the traditional equilibrium concept, the invisible hand, I suppose. He says that the relationship of equity and debt must be changed in times of economic crisis, and this all goes hand in hand with the theory of critical rationalism. So this scientific belief of critical rationalism expands to all forms of science and mathematics. Critical rationalism can be applied to just about anything. Falsifiability, denying that the facts that have been made facts by experience can be redefined because the past just so happened by chance. It all ties in together with all different forms of study and schools of thought. So along with critical rationalism, the relationship of equity and debt must be changed in times of economic crisis, of course, because nothing can be predicted. Everything is just happening the way it's happening. And plus, we can't forget entropy, the natural disorder of things. And with entropy, every single day, things become more and more chaotic, and that is a never-ending trend until everything just spirals out into perpetual disaster. And that's entropy. That's a scientific principle. Anyway, Soros says that the IMF, the monetary fund, actually wants to have the country in economic crisis to go into recession so that it has a trade surplus. So this is what the IMF wants to do to help a country when it goes into economic crisis. The IMF wants to have a country to go into economic crisis, to go into recession, so that it has a trade surplus and has far more exports than imports and comes out of the recession. So when the country is struggling and it goes into crisis, it starts to export naturally more than it imports, and it comes out of the recession. That's what the IMF wants, Soros says. He also said that the stock markets actually determine economic conditions, not vice versa. Anyway, that's all we got for today. That was part of an interview of George Soros, 1998, on his book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism. Stay tuned into the Katy Sassine Show. Thank you again for tuning in. We'll be right back with you, same place, same time tomorrow.